Are you ready for some pancakes, Ava?
Yes, with extra chocolate chips.
I think we can manage that. The first sign that my husband had another family was not lipstick on his shirt, a strange perfume, or a hotel receipt hidden inside his pocket. It was a photograph. The woman who sent it to me wrote only 6 words beneath it. I think we married the same man. My name is Danielle Carter, and until that Friday night, I believed I had a good marriage. Not a perfect marriage, but a good one. After 8 years with someone, life becomes less about flowers and romantic weekends, and more about school pickups, grocery lists, mortgage payments, laundry, soccer practice, and small arguments over everyday things. Marcus and I had built that kind of life. A normal life, or at least that was what I believed. We lived in a beautiful 4-bedroom house just outside Atlanta, Georgia. I was 34 years old and worked as a real estate agent. Marcus was 38 and worked in medical equipment sales. His job required him to travel often, usually to Chicago, Charlotte, Nashville, Raleigh, and sometimes Richmond. When we first got married, I hated how often he was away, but eventually I got used to it. Our daughter Ava was 7 years old, and Marcus was the kind of father who made it difficult to stay angry about his absence. Whenever he came home from a trip, he brought something for her. Sometimes it was a stuffed animal, a bracelet, a snow globe, or another small souvenir from wherever he said he had been. One time, he returned from Chicago, carrying a huge pink teddy bear that barely fit through our front door. Ava screamed with excitement and jumped into his arms. Marcus looked at me over her shoulder and smiled, and I smiled back. I still remember that moment clearly, because now, whenever I think about that smile, I wonder how many lies were hiding behind it. Every time Marcus traveled, he called us before bed. He would ask Ava if she had brushed her teeth, and she would proudly say yes. Then he would ask to speak to me. He would ask how his beautiful wife was doing, and I would tell him I was tired. Then he would ask if I missed him, and I would tease him by saying maybe. He would laugh and tell me that he missed me too. Sometimes we stayed on the phone for almost an hour, talking about our day, Ava, work, bills, and everything else married couples talk about. That was one of the main reasons I never suspected anything. I could not imagine how a man could maintain another relationship when he was calling his wife every night. What I did not understand then was that people who live double lives do not just become good liars. They become good schedulers. Marcus Carter had perfected his schedule. That Friday morning started like any other. Marcus came downstairs around 6:30, wearing a navy suit and carrying a small suitcase. I was in the kitchen making pancakes for Ava when he walked in. I asked if he was leaving already, and he said his flight was at 9. I asked if he was going to Chicago again, and he nodded. He said he had a conference. I asked how long he would be gone. He told me he would probably be back Sunday evening, or Monday morning if the meetings ran late. I sighed. Marcus walked behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist, and kissed my cheek. He told me not to make that disappointed little sigh. I told him I was allowed to miss my husband. He kissed my cheek again and said that was why he married me. Ava came running downstairs, shouting for her father. Marcus lifted her into the air, and she laughed while I stood there watching them. That memory later became one of the most painful ones, because just 3 hours later, Marcus sent me a message saying he was boarding and that he loved us both. I replied that I loved him too and wished him a safe flight. At exactly 7:46 that evening, Ava was upstairs watching a movie while I sat on the couch scrolling through Facebook. A message request suddenly appeared from someone named Rachel Bennett. I did not recognize the name. Her profile picture showed a woman with shoulder-length brown hair standing beside 2 little boys. I almost ignored the message, but then I saw the first few words. "Hello, Danielle. I know this is going to sound crazy." Something about those words made me open it. Rachel had written a long message explaining that she was sorry for contacting me unexpectedly. She said she had spent most of the day trying to decide whether she should reach out. She had found my Facebook profile through a photograph someone had tagged me in, and she needed to ask me something about Marcus Carter. At the end of the message, she wrote that she thought we had married the same man. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it sounded ridiculous. I immediately replied that she had the wrong Marcus Carter. Her response came almost instantly. She said she wished she did. Then she sent me a photograph. My hands went cold. Marcus was standing in a backyard with his arm around Rachel's waist. Two little boys were standing in front of them. There were balloons behind them and a birthday banner. Marcus was smiling, and the younger boy was sitting on his shoulders. They looked like a family. I stared at the picture until my eyes began to hurt. Then I zoomed in and noticed something that made my stomach turn. Marcus was wearing a wedding ring. But it was not our wedding ring. His ring was platinum with a thin black line running through the center. The ring in that photograph was gold. I asked Rachel when the picture had been taken. She said it had been taken the previous Saturday. The previous Saturday. Marcus had told me he was in Nashville. I stood up so quickly that my phone fell onto the carpet. I picked it up and called him immediately, but the call went straight to voicemail. I called again, and once again it went to voicemail. A few moments later, a message came through from Marcus. He said he was at dinner with clients and would call me later. My heart was pounding. I asked him to send me a picture of himself. He asked why. I told him I wanted a picture of him right then. He did not respond. Instead of calling him again, I opened Rachel's Facebook profile. Most of it was private, but there were enough public photographs to destroy 8 years of my life. There was Marcus beside Rachel at Christmas. There was Marcus holding one of the boys at a baseball game. There was Marcus standing next to a Christmas tree, Marcus grilling burgers, and Marcus asleep on a couch with a little boy stretched across his chest. I kept scrolling. The pictures went back for years. This was not an affair that had lasted a few weeks or even a few months. This had been happening for years. Then I found a wedding photograph. Rachel was wearing a simple white dress, and Marcus was wearing a gray suit. They were standing outside what looked like a courthouse, smiling like newlyweds. The caption underneath the photograph said it was the best decision she had ever made. The picture had been posted 7 years earlier. Marcus and I had already been married for more than a year when that photograph was taken. I dropped my phone, ran into the bathroom, and threw up. I did not sleep that night. Around 11, Marcus finally called me. I stared at his name on the screen, and for the first time in 8 years, seeing the words "my husband" made me feel sick. I answered. His voice sounded calm and relaxed. He apologized and said dinner had run late. I closed my eyes and listened carefully. Somewhere behind him, I could hear children. I asked where he was. He said he was at the hotel. I asked what the sound was. He asked what I meant. I told him I could hear children. There was a short pause before he said it was the television. My fingers tightened around the phone. I asked what hotel he was staying at. He said the Marriott. I asked which Marriott. There was another pause. Then his tone changed slightly, and he asked me what was going on. I almost confronted him right there, but something inside me stopped me. Instead, I told him I missed him. His voice softened immediately, and he said he missed me too. I told him good night. He said good night, and I ended the call. Then I remembered something. Months earlier, Marcus had connected his account to our family iPad so Ava could download movies. I opened the location app and checked the devices connected to his account. His tablet was not in Chicago. Neither was his laptop. The location showed Charlotte, North Carolina. Rachel lived in Charlotte. I immediately messaged her and asked if Marcus was with her. She replied that he was. A few seconds later, another message arrived. She said he was downstairs putting the boys to bed. My hands started shaking. I asked if he knew she had contacted me. She said no. I told her not to tell him. A few seconds later, Rachel called. I hesitated before answering, but eventually I did. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she quietly said she was sorry. I told her not to apologize. She said she did not know. I told her neither did I. Her voice was shaking when she explained that Marcus had once told her I was his cousin. I could barely believe it. She said she had seen my name years earlier, and when she asked Marcus who I was, he told her I was his cousin in Atlanta. I sat down slowly. I asked what Marcus did for work. She said medical equipment sales. I asked where he lived. She said he lived with her. My stomach turned. I asked how often he was there. Rachel explained that Marcus usually traveled 3 or 4 days every week. That was when everything finally became clear. When Marcus was with me, Rachel thought he was traveling for work. When Marcus was with Rachel, I thought he was traveling for work. He was not constantly traveling for business. He was commuting between 2 families. Rachel asked what we were going to do. I looked upstairs toward Ava's bedroom and told her I did not know yet. But by the following morning, I had made up my mind. I was going to Charlotte. I told my sister Nicole that I had an emergency property showing. Then I dropped Ava at her house and started driving. The entire journey, I kept trying to convince myself there had to be some explanation. Maybe Rachel was lying. Maybe she was obsessed with Marcus. Maybe the photographs had somehow been manipulated. Maybe there was something I had missed. But when I reached the address Rachel had given me, every excuse disappeared. A 2-story brick house stood at the end of a quiet suburban street. There was a basketball hoop in the driveway, a bicycle lying on the grass, and Marcus's black SUV parked outside. I stopped across the street and waited. A few minutes later, the front door opened, and my husband walked outside, wearing gray sweatpants and a t-shirt. A little boy followed him carrying a basketball. Marcus grabbed the ball, and the boy laughed as he tried to take it back. Then another boy ran outside and called him Dad. That one word shattered whatever denial I had left. Marcus was not visiting those children. He was not pretending to be their uncle. Those boys believed he was their father. Rachel appeared at the front door, saw my car, and looked directly at me. She gave me a small nod. I stepped out. Marcus froze. The basketball rolled away from him. His face changed the moment he saw me. He called my name. The older boy looked at him and asked who I was. Marcus said nothing. Rachel walked toward us and told Marcus to tell me who she was. Marcus asked her not to do this in front of the boys. I walked closer and asked him directly who she was. He looked at me and then at Rachel. For the first time in 8 years, Marcus Carter had no lie prepared. Rachel answered for him. She said she was his wife. I looked at her and told her that I was his wife too. The older boy stared at Marcus in confusion. Rachel immediately told both boys to go inside. Once the door closed, Marcus stepped toward me and said he could explain. I slapped him. Hard. Rachel did not stop me. I asked how long it had been going on. Marcus kept saying my name and asking me to calm down. I asked how long he had been sleeping with Rachel. Rachel suddenly snapped that they had 2 children together. I turned toward her. I had not known. I looked back at Marcus. Those boys were not children from another relationship. They were his. Ethan was 6 years old, and Noah was 4. Marcus had fathered both of them while he was married to me. I slapped him again and told him not to say my name. Neighbors had begun looking through their windows, so Marcus lowered his voice and suggested we go inside. I laughed bitterly and asked if he meant inside his other house. Rachel opened the door and said we should go inside. We sat around her dining table, with Marcus seated across from us. Rachel poured herself a glass of wine, then poured one for me. It was barely 10:30 in the morning, but neither of us cared. She told Marcus to start talking. Marcus rubbed both hands over his face and said he had never meant for any of this to happen. I asked if he had accidentally married 2 women. He said he had not planned it. Rachel laughed bitterly and asked if that was really his explanation. Marcus looked at me and said that when he first met Rachel, things between us had not been good. I asked when that had been. He said it was after Ava was born. My mouth fell open. That was the same period when Marcus had told me he was working extra hours because we needed more money. I reminded him of that. He said he really had been working. I asked if he had also been sleeping with Rachel. Marcus said nothing. Rachel looked sick. She told me Marcus had said he was divorced. I turned toward her. She explained that Marcus had told her his marriage ended because his wife cheated. I slowly looked back at Marcus and asked if he had told her I cheated on him. He said he had made mistakes. I told him this was more than a mistake. Those children were not mistakes. The house was not a mistake. 7 years was not a mistake. He had built an entire second life. Rachel stood up and reminded him that he had married her too. Marcus suddenly said there was something she needed to understand. Rachel asked what he meant. Marcus looked down. Something about his expression made my stomach tighten. Then he admitted that their marriage was not legal. The room went completely silent. Rachel asked what he meant. Marcus admitted that the paperwork had never been filed. Rachel's face went blank. She said he had told her it was. Marcus said he had planned to file it. Rachel asked how he could possibly have planned to file it when he was already married. Finally, Marcus admitted that he could not legally file the paperwork because he was married to me. Rachel grabbed her wine glass and threw it against the wall. Marcus jumped. She told him he had let her believe she was his wife for 7 years. Marcus tried to calm her down. She reminded him that their sons carried his last name. Marcus said they were still his sons. Rachel asked what that made her. Marcus could not answer. Then something suddenly clicked in my mind. Money. I looked at Marcus and asked about our money. He frowned. I stood up and asked how he had paid for Rachel's house. His face changed. That was when I realized the second family was not the only secret. I drove back to Atlanta that afternoon. Marcus did not come with me because I told him not to. That night, after Ava went to sleep, I opened every financial account I could find. For years, Marcus had handled most of our long-term finances, while I handled the household expenses. I trusted him, and that trust had made me careless. There were transfers I did not recognize. Some were small. Others were much larger. Money had been moving through accounts I had never seen before. I called Rachel immediately and told her to check everything. Her bank accounts, her credit report, and anything connected to her name. About an hour later, she called me back crying. She had found 2 credit cards in her name that she had never opened. Together, they carried almost $40,000 in debt. The next morning, I pulled my own credit report. There was a business loan for $125,000, and my name was attached to it. I had never applied for that loan. I called the bank and asked them to send me copies of the documents. My signature was there. But I had not signed them. Marcus had. My husband had not only cheated on me, he had stolen my identity. Rachel found even more. There was a home equity line, several credit cards, and personal loans. Then we discovered a company, Carter Bennett Medical Solutions. The name combined my last name and Rachel's last name. Neither of us knew the company existed. Marcus had built a business using both families as financial foundations. Suddenly, his expensive watches made sense. His new SUV made sense. The investments he never fully explained made sense. Even his constant talk about how we were building wealth finally made sense. We were not building wealth. We were funding his lies. 3 days later, Rachel drove to Atlanta and sat at my kitchen table. For a moment, we simply looked at each other. Under different circumstances, maybe we would have hated each other. She had slept beside my husband, had children with him, and celebrated anniversaries with him. But she had been lied to too. Marcus had designed his entire double life around the belief that if Rachel and I ever discovered each other, we would fight. Instead, we compared notes. I brought a notebook. Rachel brought 7 years of bank statements. Together, we created a timeline. Every Christmas Eve, Marcus spent with me. He told Rachel he was visiting his mother. Every Christmas morning he spent with Rachel, he told me he had an early flight. On my birthday, he sometimes had emergency meetings. On Rachel's birthday, he told me he was attending conferences. When Ava had pneumonia, Marcus disappeared for one night because Ethan had a school performance. When Noah was born, Marcus told me he was in Denver. There had never been a Denver trip. There had been a delivery room. Rachel eventually started crying and said she felt stupid. I told her I felt the same way. She asked how we could have failed to know. I told her the truth. We did not know because we trusted him. That was the answer. People always ask how someone could fail to notice a double life. They imagine obvious clues, strange phone calls, hidden clothes, or suspicious receipts. But when you love someone, you do not investigate every late meeting. You do not demand photographic evidence of every business trip. You do not run background checks on your own husband. Trust is not stupidity. Marcus had simply treated our trust like an opportunity. I contacted an attorney, and Rachel contacted one too. Then we reported the fraudulent accounts. Our attorneys advised us not to confront Marcus about the financial evidence yet, so we did not. We waited. And Marcus made the mistake of thinking he could still fix everything. 5 days after I returned from Charlotte, Marcus came back to our house. I was cooking dinner when he walked in. Ava screamed with excitement and ran into his arms. Marcus hugged her tightly. I watched from the kitchen, and for one painful second, I remembered the man I thought he was. After Ava went upstairs, Marcus approached me and said we needed to talk. I told him there was nothing to discuss and that he needed to leave. He said he was not leaving his house. I asked if he meant our house. He looked confused by my tone. Then he sat down and told me he had ended things with Rachel. I laughed. He said he had chosen me. I stared at him, because he genuinely seemed to believe that sentence would mean something to me. I reminded him that he had spent 7 years with another woman, fathered 2 children with her, pretended to marry her, and was now standing in my kitchen telling me he had chosen me. He said he loved me. I told him he did not love me. He loved access. He loved having access to my house, my money, my body, my loyalty, my daughter, and my reputation. He loved knowing I would always be there, while he drove 4 hours away to play husband somewhere else. He admitted that he had made terrible choices. I told him that for once, he had used the correct word. Choices. He reached for my hand, but I stepped away. He said he would go to counseling. I told him to go. He said he would change jobs. I told him to do it. He said he would give me access to everything. I told him he should have done that 8 years earlier. Then he said something that almost made me lose control. He asked me not to destroy our family. I stared at him and asked who had really destroyed it. He looked down. Then his tone changed. He told me I was angry and not thinking clearly. That was when I finally saw the man underneath all the charm. He told me I needed time and claimed Rachel was manipulating me. I laughed. He said Rachel only wanted money. I reminded him that she had 2 of his children. He said she knew what she was doing. I quietly reached for my phone. I asked what he meant. Marcus realized he had gone too far. He tried to take it back. He said Rachel knew he had once been married. I reminded him that Rachel believed he was divorced. He said that was only what she claimed now. Without him noticing, I started recording. Marcus kept talking. He claimed Rachel was trying to turn me against him because she knew that legally she had nothing. I stared at him. I asked if he cared about her at all. He said he cared about his sons. I asked if he cared about their mother. He said nothing. Then I asked if he cared about me. He said he loved me. I told him he was not afraid of losing me. He was afraid of losing what belonged to me. His face hardened. He told me to be careful. I asked if that was a threat. He said it was not a threat. He claimed he was only trying to stop another woman from convincing me to destroy everything we had built. I looked at him calmly and told him to leave. He said my name. I repeated myself. Leave. This time he did. 2 weeks later, Marcus was leaving a restaurant in downtown Atlanta when investigators approached him. Neither Rachel nor I was there, but according to his attorney, Marcus kept asking one question. He wanted to know which wife had done this. When Rachel told me, I laughed for the first time in weeks. The investigation uncovered more than either of us had expected. Marcus had forged signatures, opened accounts, submitted falsified documents, used company funds for personal expenses, and moved money between accounts connected to both households. Then we learned there were other women too. Not wives, but women. A hotel receptionist in Nashville, a pharmaceutical representative in Chicago, a woman in Richmond who believed Marcus was separated. His entire adult life seemed to have been built in compartments. One woman knew one version of him. Another knew a different version. Nobody knew the whole man. Maybe not even Marcus. The hardest conversation was not with lawyers or investigators, and it was not even with Marcus. It was with my daughter. Ava sat on her bed holding her stuffed rabbit. She asked if her father was coming home. I sat beside her and told her he was not going to live with us anymore. Her eyes filled with tears. She asked why. I had practiced my answer. I told her that her parents were having grown-up problems. She asked if her father had done something bad. I swallowed. I told her that he had made choices that hurt people. Then she asked if he had hurt me. I said yes. She wrapped her arms around me. Then she asked the question I had feared most. She wanted to know if her father still loved her. I answered immediately, yes. Whatever Marcus had done to me, I was not going to make Ava carry it. I told her that none of what had happened was her fault, and that she had done nothing wrong. Then she asked if she could still see her father. I told her we would figure everything out. She quietly said okay. Afterward, I went into the bathroom and cried into a towel so she would not hear me. Months passed. Rachel and I stayed in contact while our attorneys handled most of the legal issues. Marcus was eventually released while the financial case continued, and he moved into an apartment. The divorce became ugly. Marcus accused me of turning Ava against him. Then he accused Rachel of conspiring with me. After that, he blamed work stress, childhood trauma, and financial pressure. Marcus had explanations for everything except the simplest question: why? Why was one family not enough? He never gave us an answer. Then one Saturday, Rachel called me. She told me Ethan knew about Ava. I became quiet. She explained that Ethan had overheard Marcus arguing with her and now knew he had a sister. I asked what she had told him. She said she had told him the truth in a way that was appropriate for his age. Then Rachel asked me something I had not expected. She asked if I thought the children should meet. I was not sure at first. But the children had not created this disaster. Marcus had. So 1 month later, we met at a park halfway between Atlanta and Charlotte. Ava stood nervously beside me, while Ethan and Noah stood beside Rachel. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then Ethan looked at Ava and asked if she was Ava. She nodded. He introduced himself. She told him she already knew who he was. Then Ethan told her she was his sister. Ava looked at me, then looked back at him. She said she guessed so. Ethan smiled. He said that was cool. Within 20 minutes, the three of them were playing together. Children somehow made something simple that adults had made impossible. Rachel and I sat on a bench watching them. She asked if I had ever imagined anything like this. I told her no. She said she had not either. Then she laughed and pointed out how strange it was that our children were siblings. I smiled and told her life was strange. The financial case took more than a year. By then, Marcus and I were divorced. I kept the Atlanta house for a while after refinancing it, while Rachel moved with the boys to another neighborhood in Charlotte. Marcus eventually pleaded guilty to several financial charges after prosecutors presented evidence connecting him to forged applications and fraudulent accounts. At sentencing, Marcus asked to speak. I had not seen him in months. He looked older and somehow smaller than I remembered. He turned toward me, then toward Rachel, and finally toward the two families he had spent years keeping apart. He admitted that he had hurt everyone who trusted him. He said he had spent years trying to maintain an image, instead of becoming the man he was pretending to be. I felt almost nothing. Maybe that sounds cruel, but there comes a point when apologies arrive after so much destruction that they stop feeling like gifts. They become receipts, proof that the person finally understands the cost. Marcus continued. He said he loved all three of his children and hoped that someday they could forgive him. Ava was not in the courtroom. Neither were Ethan and Noah. That was intentional. His children did not need to watch their father receive consequences for choices they did not understand. Afterward, Rachel and I walked outside together. At the bottom of the courthouse steps, she stopped and said she guessed that was it. I told her it was only the end of his case. It was not the end of our lives. 2 years after I received that Facebook message, my life looked completely different. I had expanded my real estate business and eventually sold the house Marcus and I had shared. I bought a smaller place, not because I could not afford the old house, but because I did not want it anymore. Too many rooms held memories I no longer trusted. Sometimes I wondered whether our Christmas celebrations had really been happy or whether our anniversary dinners had meant anything to him. I wondered whether, when Marcus kissed me in the kitchen that Friday morning, he had already been thinking about Rachel. Eventually, I stopped asking. You can drive yourself crazy trying to figure out which memories with a liar were genuine. So I stopped giving the past that much power. Ava adjusted. She went to therapy, asked difficult questions, and I answered whatever was appropriate for her age. Slowly, she became herself again. She also gained 2 brothers. That was probably the strangest part of everything. Rachel and I never became the type of best friends who called each other every morning or went shopping together every weekend. But we became something difficult to explain. We became family created by betrayal. Every few months, the children spent time together during birthdays, school vacations, or weekends at the park. One summer, Rachel brought the boys to Atlanta. I was standing in my backyard when Ethan ran through the gate calling for Ava. Ava screamed with excitement and ran toward him. Noah followed behind. Rachel came through the gate carrying a bag. She joked that we now had 3 children to deal with. I told her not to remind me. She said they had already asked for pizza. I told her that did not surprise me. We laughed. Later that evening, while the children sat outside eating, Rachel and I talked. She asked if she could ask me something. I told her she could. She asked if I hated Marcus. I thought about it for a moment and told her no. She looked surprised. I explained that I had hated him at first, but eventually I realized hatred was still a relationship. I told her I did not want a relationship with Marcus anymore. Not love, not hatred, nothing beyond whatever was necessary for Ava. Rachel nodded. She said she thought she was getting there too. Then she smiled and told me she was dating someone. I turned toward her in surprise. She laughed and told me not to look so shocked. I asked who he was. She said his name was David. I stared at her for a second and asked if David traveled for work. Rachel looked at me. Then we both burst out laughing. It was the kind of laughter that only comes after surviving something terrible. 3 months later, I received a letter from Marcus. I almost threw it away without opening it, but eventually I decided to read it. He apologized again, but this time the letter was different. There were no excuses, no blame. He admitted that when he first met Rachel, he had intended it to be nothing more than an affair. Then Rachel became pregnant. Marcus panicked. Instead of telling me the truth, he created another lie. Then another, and another. Eventually, maintaining both families became his normal life. He wrote that every lie required another lie to protect it, and eventually he was not living 2 lives anymore. He was living hundreds of small lies every day. I read that sentence twice. Then I continued. Marcus admitted that sometimes, while driving between Atlanta and Charlotte, he imagined telling both of us the truth. But he was afraid. Afraid of losing Ava. Afraid of losing his sons. Afraid of losing money. Afraid of humiliation. Afraid of becoming the villain in the story he had created. So he kept lying until there was nothing left to protect. At the end of the letter, he wrote that neither Rachel nor I deserved what he had done to us. He said he understood that saying sorry could not repair anything. He simply wanted to finally tell the truth without asking for anything in return. I folded the letter. For a moment, I considered keeping it. Then I walked outside and placed it in the trash. I did not burn it. I did not tear it into pieces. I simply threw it away because I did not need another explanation. I had spent years trying to understand Marcus. Now I wanted to understand myself. Who was Danielle without Marcus? That question became more interesting than anything he could ever tell me. On the 3rd anniversary of the day Rachel contacted me, Facebook showed me a memory. It was a photograph of Marcus and me from years earlier. We were standing on a beach with his arm around me, and I was smiling. For a moment, I stared at the woman in that picture. I wanted to warn her. I wanted to tell her to check the bank accounts, check Charlotte, and ask more questions. But then I realized something. That woman had not been foolish. She had simply loved her husband. Trusting someone you married is not a character flaw. Betraying that trust is. I deleted the photograph. Then another notification appeared. Rachel had sent me a picture of Ava, Ethan, and Noah standing together at an amusement park. Ava was in the middle, Ethan was making bunny ears behind her head, and Noah was holding cotton candy. Rachel wrote that we had a crazy little family. I smiled and told her the picture was beautiful. Then she sent another message. She asked me to imagine what would have happened if she had never contacted me. I stared at those words because that thought had crossed my mind many times. What if Rachel had remained silent? Would Marcus still be traveling between us? Would there be more children? More debt? More lies? Maybe. I replied that she did contact me, and that was what mattered. A few seconds later, she sent a heart. I put my phone down. Outside, Ava was calling me. I walked into the backyard and saw that she had learned to ride her bicycle without holding the handlebars. I told her to put her hands back on the bicycle. She laughed and told me to look at what she could do. I watched my daughter race down the driveway while the evening sun stretched her shadow across the pavement. For years, I thought losing Marcus had destroyed my family. It had not. It exposed what my family actually was. My daughter, my sister, the people who stayed, the people who told the truth. Even Rachel and those 2 little boys in North Carolina who entered my life in the most painful way imaginable. Marcus spent 7 years building 2 separate families because he believed the truth would destroy them. In the end, the truth did not destroy either family. It destroyed his ability to control them. And sometimes, I think that is what liars fear most. Not simply being exposed, but losing control of the story. Marcus wanted Rachel and me never to meet, because as long as we remained strangers, he could tell each of us whatever version of reality he needed. To me, Rachel was nobody. To Rachel, I was a cousin. To his co-workers, Marcus was a hard-working family man. To his children, he was simply Dad. Everybody had one piece. Nobody had the whole picture. Until one woman sent one message, one photograph, and 6 words. I think we married the same man. That message ended my marriage. It exposed debts I did not know existed. It forced my daughter to learn that her father was not the man she believed he was. It introduced me to 2 children I never knew my daughter had as brothers. For a long time, I wished I had never opened that message. Today, I am grateful I did. The truth can be cruel when it arrives. It can tear through your life before you are ready. It can embarrass you, anger you, break your heart, and make you question every memory you thought you understood. But a lie does something even worse. A lie steals your ability to choose. If I had known about Rachel 7 years earlier, I would have had a choice. If Rachel had known about me, she would have had a choice. Marcus took those choices away from us because he decided protecting himself was more important than allowing us to know the truth about our own lives. I can forgive many things, but I will never call that love. Love without truth is possession. Love without respect is convenience. And a marriage built on deception is not a marriage. It is a stage. Marcus was the actor. Rachel and I were the audience. Neither of us knew we were watching the same performance until the curtain finally fell. These days, when people hear what happened, they usually ask me the same question. They ask how I did not know. I used to hate that question because it made me feel foolish. Now I answer differently. I tell them I did not know because my husband worked very hard to make sure I did not. Then people usually ask whether I would ever get married again. That question makes me smile. Maybe I will. Maybe I will not. I do not know. But I do know one thing. The next person who enters my life will not have to pay for Marcus's mistakes. I refuse to turn his dishonesty into my permanent inability to trust. That is another thing betrayal can steal if you allow it. Your future. Marcus already took 8 years. He does not get the rest. Last weekend, Ava asked if we could drive to Charlotte for Ethan's birthday. I said yes. When we arrived, Rachel was standing outside. The boys ran toward Ava. David was there too. Rachel introduced us properly. He seemed kind, but more importantly, Rachel seemed peaceful. At one point, she walked beside me and asked if I was okay. I told her I was. She looked toward the children and said it was crazy that something so terrible had created this. I knew what she meant. Not that Marcus's betrayal had been good. It had not. But sometimes life grows around damage, like flowers pushing through cracks in concrete. You do not celebrate the crack. You celebrate the fact that something beautiful refused to die inside it. Ava ran toward me and asked for a picture. Rachel handed David her phone. The children stood in front of us, and then Ava grabbed my hand and asked me to join them. I hesitated. Rachel smiled and told me to come over. I walked over. Rachel stood on one side, I stood on the other, and the 3 children stood between us. David raised the phone and told everyone to smile, and we did. Later that night, Rachel sent the picture to me. I saved it. Not because it represented the family Marcus built. It represented the family that survived him. And that is the part of the story I want people to remember. Not simply that my husband had another family 2 states away. Not simply that he lied for 7 years. Not even that he stole money and forged signatures. Remember what happened when the truth finally reached the 2 women he had spent years keeping apart. He expected jealousy. He expected screaming. He expected us to blame each other. Instead, we compared our stories. We followed the money. We protected our children. And we walked away. Marcus thought having 2 families made him powerful. But the truth was much simpler. His entire world depended on 2 women never having one conversation. And all it took to bring everything down was 1 photograph, 1 message, and 6 words. I think we married the same man,